Hi, this is Dave Myers with Paper Trail Financial with a new screencast on creating common size statements from QuickBooks reports. In my last video, I went over how to integrate both horizontal and vertical analysis into QuickBooks reports. Now I'm going to go over some techniques I use when modifying the same reports in Excel. In the last screencast, I mentioned that QuickBooks balance sheet doesn't allow for a proper vertical analysis. You can't view accounts as a percentage of total assets, but you can do it in Excel. I'll go up to the report menu and bring up the company financial balance sheet previous year comparison. I'll modify the report, and I don't need the dollar change, I just want to see the percentage change. And with it modified like this, I'll export it to Excel. In Excel, I'll do some formatting. First, I'll change the width to one page. We don't need the date and time stamp. And to make some room, I'm going to stretch across the top of the report, Control 1 alignment, and center the header across the selection. That way I can shrink down this column. I'll resize a couple of columns here for additional column headers. The first is going to be percent of assets for 2015. And percent of assets for 2014. And I'll use the format pattern just to match the borders. Now to calculate percentage of assets, I need to divide each balance sheet account by total assets. The easiest way to do that is using just one formula with a mixed cell reference and let autofill take care of the rest of the calculations. So I'm going to type an equal sign, and then I'll click on the 2015 account directly to the left, divided by, and scroll down and find total assets and click on that. Now I'll scroll back up, and I want to hit the F4 key a couple of times. The dollar sign between the G and the 35 will anchor the total assets row in the denominator of the formula when we autofill. So I'll hit enter, and then I'll change this to a percentage. I can autofill to the right, and then autofill all the way down. Excel returns some blank rows as 0%, so in order to fix that, I'll modify Excel's options. I'll go up to the Office button and then choose Excel Options and then the Advanced tab. I'll scroll down to where it says Display Options for this worksheet, and I'll uncheck the box that says Show a 0 in cells with 0 value. This is the same balance sheet, I just did a little formatting, and you can see the type of information you get from having both horizontal and vertical common sizing on the same statement. For example, total cash, checking and savings, increased over 22% this year, but in terms of its impact on the balance sheet, cash stays relatively constant, comprising 10% of total assets this year as opposed to 9% last year. We can also see that our accounts receivable increased dramatically, 346%, and now accounts for almost 15% of total assets, up from only 3.5% last year. Now switching over to the profit and loss report, I'll show a way to use conditional formatting in Excel to recognize trends in income and expenses. I'll go up to the report menu, Company and Financial, and bring up the profit and loss standard report, and I'll make some modifications. First, I'll modify the dates so we have a full year of results. I'll change the previous year to 12/16, 2014. I want to display columns by month, and I want to add the percent of income row. Now QuickBooks creates a very large report, but if I collapse it, I'm going to lose some of the detail from the sub-account. So instead, I'm going to leave it expanded and export it to Excel. This is a large report, so I'm going to need to make some room. I'll merge across these first columns on the left that have the row headers in them, and I'll shrink the row header columns down. Also resize all the columns to try and fit this on one screen, and I'll get rid of the time and date stamp. Now I'm only interested in looking at the common size trend, so I don't need all the dollar amount columns. So holding down the control key, I'm going to go every other one across here and highlight all the columns that have the dollar amounts in them. And I'll just right click and choose hide. Now here we have a pure comparative statement showing the proportion of the size of accounts in relation to total income. But I want to take a closer look at trends in income and expenses, so I'll use some conditional formatting. I'll highlight the income accounts from the second month on. And I'll choose conditional formatting, new rule. And I want to use a formula. So click on formula, and then for the formula I want to subtract the first month from the second month. So I'll click on the second month. Excel will insert an absolute reference with the dollar signs anchoring it in place, and I want to change that by pressing the F4 key 3 times to change it to a relative reference. Then we'll insert a minus and click on the first month, hit F4 3 times to change it to a relative reference, greater than or equal to 5%. I'll click on the Format button, the Fill tab, and for increases in revenues I'll choose green. So now all months when a revenue account improves 5% or more in relation to total income, it's highlighted in green. But I want to add additional formatting for 5% or more decreases in revenue. So I'll go back to conditional formatting, manage rules, new rule, and we'll click on formula again. And this time we're going to subtract the second month from the first month. So we'll click on the first month, F4 3 times to make it a relative reference, minus the second month, F4 3 times, greater than or equal to 5%. I'll click the Format button, and for decreases in revenue I'll use a reddish color. So now we can spot trends in our revenue accounts as they relate to overall income. We can do the same formatting for expense accounts, just reverse the colors. I'll highlight cost of goods sold and go to conditional formatting, new rule. I'll choose a formula rule, and just like before we'll choose second month, F4 to make it a relative reference, minus the first month, F4 to make it a relative reference, greater than or equal to 5%. I'll click the Format button, and this time I'm going to choose red for an increase because it's an increase in an expense. So click OK. And OK. Now just like before, we'll create a second rule, new rule, using a formula. And the formula this time is going to be the second month subtracted from the first month, using F4 to take out the relative references, greater than or equal to 5%, Format button, and we'll choose green for reduction in expense. So I'll scroll up, and here we can see now color-coded fluctuations in both revenue and in expenses in relation to income. Now once we have the formatting in place for the expenses, it's easy to copy it down. I can just go to any cog cells and highlight them and Control-C to copy, scroll down, and I'll use gross wages, and I'll highlight these, right-click, and paste special, and just paste the formatting.